October 28th, 1943. A ship left the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, the USS Eldridge. It was supposed to be invisible to radar. What it became was something else entirely. The Navy called it classified. Everybody else called it something else. This was the tale of the sailors lost in time and space, a story of the experiment that made people disappear. The USS Eldridge was just another destroyer escort, commissioned in July, armed, seaworthy, one purpose: protect the fleet. But the men on board, they whispered about something different. Not drills, not radar tests, something hidden. The year was 1943. World War II had ravaged the globe. The Allies, locked in a deadly struggle for control of the Atlantic. The threat of German U-boats loomed dark over every convoy. It sent shivers down the spine of every sailor at sea. Their only hope? A radical new technology cooked up by the US Navy. Whispers of it rendering ships invisible to enemy radar systems spread like wildfire. The USS Eldridge? It was at the heart of the story. The white savior, the knight in the shining armor, the underdog, at least until it vanished from the face of the earth. Weeks before the big day, the Navy had been the busiest it had ever been. The Eldridge was docked in Philadelphia. Crew members and low-ranking sailors were told to look the other way. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock. And then it happened. Not the way everyone had planned, or could have possibly predicted. October 28th. The ship powered up. Lights cut out. A hum rolled through the water. And then, silence. Witnesses say the ship shimmered, turned blue, then vanished. Minutes later, it reappeared, but not all at once. One sailor was fused to the hull, their limbs never to move again. Another would never speak again. And some were gone. Not just physically, they were left to wander the decks in states of unimaginable confusion and terror, with no memory of who they were or what had happened. Some say the military brainwashed the survivors, sealed off their traumas, destined to become another dusty, classified military file. Others walked off with mysterious illnesses, with all hope of living a normal life again vaporized. But what really happened? Some say the ship reappeared somewhere 200 miles away before blinking back into existence in Philadelphia. Some whispered about the ship vanishing entirely, lost to another dimension with no hope of return. Scientists with the best degrees and the top military brass who had seen everything there was to see, short for words. Some say there was an initial test, one that led to partial invisibility, a weak promise that inspired the Navy to give the experiment a green signal. Instead, they found themselves staring at mutilated bodies, men who'd forever be confined to the asylum. Was it the secrets of teleportation, or something else entirely? The consequences of mankind flying too close to the sun and paying the price. The Navy said it never happened, but the crew said otherwise. Medical records vanished. Families were paid. And the Eldridge? It was reassigned, quickly, quietly. But it carried something with it. Whatever happened that day didn't stay behind. Some say it was a cloaking device. Others, a teleportation test gone wrong. A few believe the ship moved through time, but the ones who were there, they say things were missing afterward. Not memories, pieces of themselves. But things done in the dark always come to light, and what happened on the Eldridge did not stay confined to military documents for too long. 1955. The first crack appeared. Writer and astronomer Morris K. Jessup found himself reading something he never thought he would in this lifetime. A series of cryptic letters from a man calling himself Carlos Miguel Allende. His words sounded like a work of fiction, an old campfire story, something the elders told the children to scare them of the dark, quiet sea at night. But Allende spoke from experience. Secret knowledge, government cover-ups, and the dangers of tampering with the fabric of reality. His letters spoke about all of it. But the world showed no signs of believing him. Allende was labeled a madman, and anyone who believed them, too gullible, too naive, a child at heart who wanted to believe in stories. That was until Alfred Bielek stepped forward. Decades later, a crew member on board the Eldridge who had seen it all, one of the few souls who managed to walk off that ship. For years, the memories of that night lay buried, locked in a box with the key thrown away. But memories have a way of resurfacing. Some say it was hypnosis. Others say it was the nightmares that plagued Bielek. Either way, the memories of that horrific night came back to haunt him, and what he described was not only the disappearance of the ship, but a journey through time, a reality-defying leap from 1943 to 2137, and then to 2749, and then a jerk back to the present. His words sounded almost too unbelievable, the plot of a failed sci-fi novel, but the men who disappeared made it all too real, and so the questions piled on. Military sources spoke about the US Navy spending a fortune on an invisible radar, an exciting new scientific leap, something called degaussing, that dangled the promise of scrambling the ship's magnetic signature and protecting it from German torpedoes. The impossible. Others said that the Navy was up to something else entirely. Powerful electromagnetic fields meant to bend the rules of science itself. Men of science called it another fairy tale. Maybe if the year was really 2137. But this was 1943. A time when the world was only just learning about computers and jet engines. So what then? Men of logic and reasoning blamed it on a lack of understanding, military documents falling into the wrong hands, and the word of mouth and fear-mongering doing the rest. But the military response? That tells another story, a straight-up denial. Forged military documents that support those claims. The official version? The USS Eldridge was nowhere near Philadelphia on those dates. Instead, it was miles away, soaking up the sun in the Bahamas. Crew members? They said they saw nothing out of the ordinary. Spokesmen like Edward Dudgeon, who served in the US Navy aboard the USS Engstrom, stepped forward, spinning believable lies for the public. His words? The Eldridge never left Engstrom's side at the Philadelphia Naval Yard. Whispers about the military's newest toys? Lies in Dudgeon's eyes. The ships carried classified devices on board. But light-bending magnets? Teleportation drives? That was the work of madmen and conspiracy theorists. But what about the mysterious green glow? The one that scarred fellow sailors and merchants for life? Some suggest that too could be explained. An electric storm, or St. Elmo's fire. An eerie weather phenomenon. One that creates a strong electric field, and more importantly, a bright glow, almost like fire. Almost like the one that the men at sea caught sight of. But that still didn't explain it all. What about the accounts of the men who witnessed the ship at the second location? What weather phenomenon was the government going to use to explain that? Well, none. But the inland canals connecting Norfolk to Philadelphia were brought up, a passageway that allowed a ship to travel between the two in a few hours. And so, another rumor was buried. Whispers were shut down. All so people would look the other way and stop demanding the truth. In the eyes of the government, it was an elaborate hoax. But the people knew. Men like Allende and Bielek made sure of it, even in the face of great opposition. One team of investigators tried to bore holes in Bielek's account, telling people he was never on board the ship. Jessup, the man who told Allende's story to the rest of the world. He found himself in a dark room with the Navy's top brass. He had sent them one of his own books, one highlighted like a man, telling one message. He knew. He knew it all. For Jessup, those letters were eye-opening. He had become obsessed, a detective who needed to connect the dots and get to the bottom of things. And that unnerved a lot of people in a lot of rooms. So Jessup's obsession became his undoing. He ended up taking his own life. Or maybe that too was part of the hoax. But the truth persists, always, without fail. Men who believed in the cause learned to look past the lies and connect the dots. The government called it a hoax, but a simple question untangled that. Why put all that effort into debunking a lie? Why not let the people believe what they want to believe? Maybe it was the persistent phone calls, the never-ending questions about the lives lost, the demand for justice, an answer for the families left behind. Or maybe it was much simpler. A simple need to cover up the truth. A failed experiment. One that cautioned men about playing God. For that reason alone, the people couldn't leave the story alone. And so, decades passed, but the whispers didn't. Men of truth took on the responsibility of spreading Allende's message to the public. 127 copies of the same pages that carried one burden: the burden of telling the stories of the men lost at sea, never to return home. Conspiracy boards lit up, videos resurfaced. Old sailors, gray and tired, started talking. And always the same look in their eyes, like they saw something they weren't supposed to see. The ship was long gone, transferred to Greece and sold for scraps. The records are sealed, but the story remains. A vanishing that no one saw. A memory that never faded. Maybe it was just a rumor, or maybe it worked.